The Jerry Doyle Show.
Now, we've been discussing the troubling and growing intrusion into our daily lives by both government and private entities. But let me give you a couple of numbers. Between 2009 and 2011, warrantless electronic surveillance requests increased 60%. The number of people whose phone calls were subject to the surveillance tripled. When you take a look at the Department of Justice surveillance of Internet communications, that increased 361%. And cell phone carriers responded to 1.3 million demands from law enforcement in 2011 alone. The question is, what are they doing? But more importantly, what are they doing with all of this data? Joining us on the program, the hardest working man working nonstop to keep the open jaws of big government from swallowing up your constitutional rights. He's a New York Times bestselling author, Fox News Channel senior judicial analyst, Judge Andrew Napolitano. Judge, welcome back to the show.
What a pleasure to be with you, Jerry. And the face of those open jaws does not have a smile on it.
I have to tell people I stole your line, the open jaws of big government, because I heard you say it today on Cavuto's show on Fox.
You can take any one of those lines you like. It's the highest form of flattery.
When you look at these numbers, when you look at people looking at domestic phone, email, internet surveillance, the numbers skyrocketing. When you look at the people that are tracking our license plates, when you look at the privacy cases that are being argued, as you point out, where no one's ever gone before with regard to the Fourth Amendment, I guess the question should be, Judge, why is this happening? But more importantly, what are they doing? What's the purpose of collecting all of this data?
Well, the government has scared us, starting with George W. Bush and continuing to Barack Obama. Interestingly, then Senator Obama opposed much of the national security state that was established by then President Bush. Now that Barack Obama is in the White House, he has actually taken it to another level. And you're right, Jerry. Just 2 days ago, the Obama administration argued to federal judges in New Orleans, well, it would be yesterday, so 1 day ago, that because a record of your behavior is in the hands of a third party, like your computer carrier or your telephone carrier, records of your computer use and your telephone calls, you don't have an interest in it, you don't have a right to privacy, and hence they don't need a search warrant in order to get it. Now, I can't imagine the court accepting this argument. It was rejected by 2 lower courts. If it is accepted, it will be a radical, dramatic change in 230 years of consistent understanding of the Fourth Amendment, which is when the government wants something that's yours, even if it's in the hands of a third party, it has to get a search warrant for it. So when the government makes these bizarre arguments, it does so by trying to scare the public and even scare the judges that this is the only way it can keep us safe. It, of course, forgets that its first job is to keep us free. And if it keeps us safe but not free, it's not doing its job. Now, there's a lot of nuances here. In some cases, the government is blatantly violating the law, as when it talks third parties who possess these records into coughing them up by misleading them or intimidates them into doing so, or when it blatantly spies on people without a warrant because it knows that no judge would give it a warrant.
If you could, Judge, just expand on that, how the government would intimidate these entities to give up this information that you point out is something that no one's ever heard the argument of with regard to the Fourth Amendment in 230 years. What can the government do to, let's say, my cell phone carrier or yours or anyone's listening to this show? What can they say to them?
Ask a guy named Joe Naccio. Joe Naccio was the president of Quest Communications. In the Bush administration, the FBI came calling to the then five major telecoms in the country, asking them to permit the FBI to come on premises to install equipment that would facilitate the massive surveillance of telephone communications. 4 of them said yes, 1 of them said no. Mr. Naccio is now serving 10 years in jail for insider trading, a crime he probably didn't commit, and even if he did, it was the type of close-to-the-line behavior that almost no one is indicted for. So the government has vast powers to coerce neutral third parties to comply with its behavior. Ask John Allison, who was the chair of BB&T, a bank headquartered in North Carolina, which when he became the chair had $5 billion in assets, and when he retired had $120 billion in assets. When he told the feds he didn't want their TARP money, suddenly the FDIC came calling and reminded him that they could conduct an audit if he didn't comply with the Treasury Department, and the audit would cost him tens of millions, and it would take about 4 or 5 years. So the government can do a lot of things, spinning its discretion and exercising powers that it has to make one's life miserable if one doesn't cooperate with it.
When you take a look at these high-profile cases that they send the message, see what can happen to Joe Nocchio, see what can happen to so-and-so, it then trickles down to other people that just go, well, I guess I must comply. And there's a subtlety and a subtlety of tyranny in the way by which they go about getting what they want, which is illegal and unconstitutional. And I would have to suggest, Judge, unwarranted, because I think when you said earlier that the government has scared us, I think scaring the American people has allowed for the big expansion of Homeland Security, contracts for scanning machines at airports that go to benefit political insiders. When you take a look at the number of people that died last year in the United States from terrorist attacks, the number is 17, equal to the number of people who were killed by furniture that fell on them and killed them. So I'm questioning what it is that they're really doing, in so much as it's supposedly protecting us or keeping us safe, or have they found just an opportunity or yet another opportunity to make a whole lot of money by keeping us scared?
I think the government is filled with nanny-staters and do-gooders who like to expand the power of the government and who like to exercise their authority over us. I think in the case of some of them, they really think they are making our lives better. I think in the case of others, it's what St. Augustine called libido dominandi, the lust to dominate. Very few people are like Ron Paul, who when they campaign for office say, if elected, I'm going to do my best to shrink the government, and then when they get elected, they do their best to shrink the government. At best, some people who say they're going to shrink the government get in there and end up doing the opposite. Look, this is a very, very serious problem, and really the American people need to resist it. Who would have thought 10 years ago, just 10 years ago, right after 9/11, 11 years ago if you want, that we would permit the federal government to touch us in our private parts in a public airport, to force women to destroy expressed milk that they had prepared for their babies on flight because it exceeded the 3.5 ounces that the government arbitrarily claims we cannot take on board. Who would think that we would stand in a metal machine with our hands above our head to the commands of a government agent in a public place? Is that the position of a free person? Now, we now accept all this. We accept the groping. We accept the destruction of liquids. We accept the take your shoes and belt and watch off and stand with your hands above your head because the government has scared us and because we lack the courage to resist it. What will we accept 10 years from now? Because 10 years ago, we wouldn't have accepted this.
I don't. Some people will find this unacceptable, Judge, but I'll say it to you and to people who listen to the program. I think that our government has done more damage to this country than Al Qaeda and the Taliban combined. And I don't say that lightly, and I don't say that cavalierly. But when you take a look at what it is that they're doing to us relative to what was done to us, and as tragic as the events of September 11, 2001 were and still are, I would have to think that people are seeing this as an opportunity to exploit our constitutional rights and to grow government for the sake of government and not for the benefit of the people.
I could not agree with you more, and I could not have said it more poignantly and eloquently. It is the most serious problem facing us today. A close second is the debt, because if it keeps going up at the rate it's going up, it'll be $20 trillion at the end of the next president's term, and that means $1 trillion a year in debt service, and we just don't have the cash. But the sleeper issue, the one that most of the public doesn't recognize, is this loss of personal freedom and the creation of a police state. Now, this is another whole interview, what local police are doing. We're just talking about what federal police are doing, what local cops are doing.
We'll have
mimic the feds.
We'll have to do that another time. Judge Andrew Napolitano, New York Times best-selling author, his book, It's Dangerous to Be Right When the Government is Wrong, The Case for Personal Freedom. Fox News Channel senior judicial analyst and a heartless working man, keeping the open jaws of big government for swallowing up your constitutional rights. The website is judgenap.com. Thank you, Judge. I appreciate your time. Let's do it again.
Pleasure, my man.
Stick with us. We'll be right back.
This is the Jerry Doyle Show.